So it's 5:30 in the morning, and I get a YouTube notification. There's no audio on part 2. So what I'm going to do here in this is replace part 2 with this part. Different image, as I couldn't find another that exactly matched it, but it won't matter because this is about how you get translucent clay onto the transfer. Try to make this as easy to follow as possible. All right, I cut the clay off of a new block of translucent clay. I don't know how old this is, but it's not really new. And I conditioned it, and it feels good and flexible and stretchy. Which is precisely what you want. You want clay that is fluid and that is not brittle. Now cutting it off the block is important because if you gather up little bits and pieces of translucent, mush them together, most likely you're going to have little air pockets inside, and you really don't want those. Now also, in terms of the clay that you use for the transfer itself, I would also recommend that you cut it off fresh off of a block, because air inside the clay could create problems for you later, and that's what happens when we gather up our little scraps from all over and mush them together. So let me just roll this through a couple more times, and then we're ready to begin. Okay, so that feels good. Now, if it had been more rigid, of course, I would have added some of my conditioning bar just to soften it up, but I don't believe it's necessary in this case. Now, before I stretch and thin this out, what I'm going to do is apply a very thin coat of liquid clay to the surface of the transfer. And this is very simple. You just dab it with your fingers like this. And this is basically just preparing the surface to accept the translucent clay. Okay, not too much. Just enough, but not too much. Now, I will start listening to every single segment. And the reason why I don't is that I hate the sound of my voice. So I just got to get over myself, I guess. All right. Or I need an assistant who will listen to everything. Now, this has been rolled through setting number 4, which is really thick for our purposes. So I'm just going to cut it down, and I'm going to roll it down through about setting number 6 or 7. There's 7. Let's try for, here's 7. Let's try for 8. Okay, I'm gonna stop at 8. I'm gonna cut some of this off because it's a lot more clay than we need. And it's just going to get in the way and fold back on itself and do all kinds of things that will make everything more difficult. And I just lop all of that off. Okay, Now this I'm going to slowly stretch out. Stretch in one direction, then slowly stretch the other way, and continue to pull and stretch to make this sheet very, very, very thin. Now there's another thing about this process. If you're just starting, maybe it's your first one, try to select an image that has a lot of white or is actually on the light side. Because if there are any imperfections, like these little tiny white dots in my sheet, you can see them, they will be less visible on a light image than on a dark. You know, the process is the same, but the end result, the difference between something you really like and something you don't in the end result could be as simple as the difference between picking a transfer that is light, or an image, excuse me, that is light, or an image that is dark. Okay, see, so it's getting a little difficult to handle, so I'm gonna cut off some of this. That's just you have to make it as easy as possible on yourself. And this is a process that requires kind of a light touch and some patience. Now this is the second time I've done this morning. And I did it previously, and I will show you what I did. And it was just honestly too thick. Certain parts of the process were easier because of the additional thickness, but the end result was just an image that you couldn't really see through the translucent. This is really getting thin. That's good. It's thin, and I haven't actually created any holes. And that is a function of just very slowly stretching. All right. So let's get this onto Doc. This image is my dog, Doc, that I drew. He was such a sweet boy. Good boy. Louis is very much like him, very sweet. But Louis has a much higher dog IQ. But my Doc, this guy, he was special. Okay, so if possible, you want to do it the way I did it, like this. You see I secured one side and then just slowly holding it up, working it down like that. Now, the original part 3, I'm going to leave. I debated about it, but I'm going to leave it because it is the harder way to accomplish this task. Thought about eliminating it, but I think you might benefit if you watch and see how this can be done the easy way or the hard way. We come into our studios, and some days are literally diamonds, where things seem to go right and all's right with the world, and you're happy and you love clay and all those good things. And then sometimes you go into the studio and it's like, I can't do anything. And it happens, I believe, to all of us. And I will trim that better, but you're going to hold it up and look, and you'll be able to find the stray bubble. Pierce and get rid of it. There aren't nearly as many in this sheet as there were in the sheet in part 3 that you will see. But you can see the image pretty clearly. Here is the original transfer. Let me get one. The original transfer is here. And here is what I just did. And while, of course, it isn't like crystal clear, it is pretty clear. You can see a lot of details in here underneath that translucent clay. Now here is what you're heading toward as you finish working the class. The transfer with the translucent clay on top. Okay, so continue on. This will not become this because it's too small. So I'm just going to cure this in the oven. Trim it, of course, and cure it, and maybe I'll have a little ducky pendant. All right, so on we go.